Chapter 31. Now we're going to round off all the things that we've been speaking about in regard to sadness and depression, because 32, which is halev, is obviously we sort of pick up the topic again, but also kind of go in a different direction with this. This is kind of considered rounding out this section. How do we deal with challenges that we go through? How do we deal with anything that can weigh us down? How do you deal with apathy or timtum halev, what it's called, the dullness of the heart? The last chapter was all about shiftless. Make yourself smaller, because the light can't come in unless you break yourself up. Let's say if we do this and we do this so effectively, we're now at risk of falling into depression, especially if we're very effective with it. So great, the method can end up capsizing the boat again. Everybody run to the other side of the ship and then we tip over. So that's not very helpful, now is it? This chapter is going to say, what do we do about the fact that when we destroy the spirit of ourself, as in when we work to destroy our material self, we want to break our ego. Sure, we're going to get rid of timtum halev and we've broken up a log and now it could catch fire, but we're now at risk of falling into depression, God forbid. We did such a good job of making ourselves small that we really turned ourselves into worms. We don't want that either. It's the ongoing theme that anything that's going to weigh us down is going to prevent us from serving God, and specifically serving God with joy. We're trying to unshackle ourselves and figure out how to deal with these things that seem to be shackles and weights that have been placed upon us. We already went through different ways of how to deal with it, knowing that everything is from God and different things like that. Now we have this chapter. If you're going to sit for a long time and really meditate on this making yourself smaller stuff, we might have a risk of falling into depression. The Rebbe specifically tells us that there's a difference between, we use it in the Hebrew, atzvus, which is the word that we're using for this debilitating sadness, what we would colloquially call depression, versus merirus, versus brokenheartedness. Merirus, we sort of call it bitterness because that's the literal translation of maror, bitterness. But a lot of people hear bitterness, they think of bitter people, and those aren't great people to hang around with either. But merirus is kind of more of remorsefulness. That sense of I don't like where I'm at, and because I haven't sunk too far, I'm still open to action. Because I'm dissatisfied with where I am, and that is a sense of sadness, but we haven't sunk ourselves too far to keep ourselves from actually acting. Versus atzvus, this sort of debilitating sadness, depression, not only does it prevent us from acting, but it often leads to sin or transgression because we try to find ways to make it go away and we're not looking at healthy options usually. That's overeating or just engaging in really bad behaviors, drinking too much or drugs or whatever it's going to be. Maybe not to such extremes, but we usually engage in really not good behaviors because how do I get out of this deep sadness if you can even get yourself up at all? I don't know. I wouldn't make a broad statement. Probably a lot of people engage in those kinds of behaviors either just because they're reckless. Maybe recklessness does come from a sense of dissatisfaction. Can you say that everything's kind of intertwined in a spaghetti format? So possibly dissatisfaction, recklessness, meaninglessness. Is there sadness at the root of it? Well, you say there's sadness somewhere in there. The sadness that they feel like there's no meaning, so they go behave in reckless behavior. Maybe, but I don't know. We're not looking at it from the end and going backwards. We're looking at it from the front and seeing what it can lead to. It's not an absoluteness. I don't know. You'd have to go through all the reasonings and then decide if you think that there's atzvus at the root of any of those. Or if they're the Siamese twin of atzvus. I'd say it could be. Here's what we want to do. The Rebbe tells us that how are we going to fight this, especially if we find ourselves falling into sadness. It's normal when you've made yourself feel so lowly, sadness is going to be introduced into the equation. Usually someone doesn't beat themselves up and is like, great, we're doing fine right now. So it's a natural progression to actually have sadness come after you've made yourself feel so lowly or worthless or whatever, I'm not worthy. Not in nivos, the shiftless. What we want to do is want to catch that sadness before it sinks us into depression or debilitating sadness. We want to catch it and turn it into sadness of change, which is what we have from the Gemara. Minei ve iba yeshidya be nirga. For the forge itself comes the handle for the axe. A tree is chopped down with an axe. Where does the handle from the axe comes from? It comes from wood. That which is being used to chop down the tree comes from the actual tree. So what is the Rebbe saying? We're using the forest here. The tree is going to be the metaphor for the sadness. We're going to use sadness itself to chop down the sadness. Meaning, now that we've brought sadness in, we've entered sadness into the equation, because we've made ourselves feel so lowly and all that kind of stuff, we're going to take the sadness and use it as a sadness of change. Because usually if you're happy-go-lucky, you're not dissatisfied. If you're happy-go-lucky, you don't think that there has to be any new levels reached. You could, but it doesn't have the same impetus as dissatisfaction is a much more powerful driving force for change. Usually something has to happen to jolt somebody to change. Not always, but often. Now, I'll say there's a positive element of it. If you get inspired, you can be inspired to change. But here we're looking at it from the negative aspect. How do we take the negativity and use it to inspire us to change? That's exactly it. We are using atzvus against itself. But we have to catch it before it becomes actual depression. The sadness that's coming into us, we want to make sure it becomes merirus instead of atzvus. There is a sad state that's coming upon us because we just beat ourselves up. We broke ourselves. It is possible and natural that there will be a sadness coming upon ourselves. So we want to take the sadness and weaponize it as merirus, remorsefulness, because that will guide us to change. We don't want to allow it to sink us and become atzvus as depression and debilitating sadness, because that are the negative forces trying to sink us and slowing down our train of awesome. We don't want our train of awesome to be slowed down. So here it's like the valleys of life lead up to the mountain kind of thing. We're going to take a dip, but we're not going to keep plunging. We're going to use the dip to go back up again. Anything that could cause someone to be sad, if someone's dissatisfied of anything, how come I'm not whatever? So either you become depressed about it and you just engage in terrible behavior, or you're like, how come I'm not whatever? Well, then I better make myself whatever I want to be. Some people are so depressed about their size. So what do? They go and they eat a gallon of ice cream. Well, that's not helpful, is it? Some people are depressed about their size, so what do? They go out for a walk. Yes, I'm taking that sadness and I'm turning it into my channel for change. As in, I'm going to use that dissatisfaction I have. It's not going to be dispelled right away. But I'm going to use that sadness. That's going to be my fuel right now for change. Because when I will be at the other end of change, then I'll be in happiness. Which is also, that's how we know if we've used the sadness correctly. Because sadness that leads to more sadness is bad sadness. It's the wrong sadness. Sadness that leads to change and goodness was sadness that was used in the right kind of way. We usurped it and we turned it into the right kind of thing. We could use it as a meter. That driving thing of, I will get this done. I will finish this. I will change. That's not a happy thought that's driving that. That is a very determined, angry, whatever kind of thought. Or sadness. Someone who's like, I never want to have done that again. It's not coming from a place of happiness. How could I have ever done something like that? I will never do it again. I'm going to be so vigilant about this now. Where does that drive and determination is coming from? The sadness that you felt of, damn it, that's what we're aiming for. So now we see that it's resulted in good. We know that we've used it correctly. Think, what is the end result of this? Does it lead to change? Does it lead to betterment? Now I've turned it into an axe. Versus not, then I haven't. In every sadness, there's going to be a benefit. There's going to be something more to it. What is this benefit that comes from sadness? It's the joy, the simcha that comes after the sadness. Not just, oh, now you're sad and tomorrow you're going to be happy. But when you use sadness as a driving force for change, whatever process you have to go through in your life because you're going through some changes or whatever it is, so you use it for changes to end up in a better place, that is the benefit that comes from sadness. We've weaponized it now. We've used it now to get us to where we want to be. You're feeling it come upon you, good. Take this feeling of sadness and fuel yourself with it. Use it as your driving force. This is your axe to chop down the tree of negative stuff. That's how we have also that miris v'leishnish, bitterness kind of and a broken heart. This is something still alive and it's active. Versus atzvos, it's resigned, it's deadness. You can't do anything with atzvos, the depression, the debilitating sadness. Miris and just brokenheartedness, non-debilitating sadness, then we have what to work with. Ki atzvos, hi shaliba timtum kevin van chayis blibo. Atzvos, as in what we're using here in Tanya terms, means that his heart is dull as stone and there is no life in his heart. Someone who's depressed, you can't get anything in there. There's coldness in the sense that there's no life to that. There's nothing penetrating. But bitterness, miris, and remorse are the opposite. Since embitterment itself is a sign of life. The fact that you're feeling bitter right now, that's a living emotion. That's an alive emotion. It's not sinkingness. It's not sunkenness. It's writhing. There's an unsettlingness to it. Not just, oh, you're buried under a rock. That's what atzvos is. You're just sunk. You cannot move. You can't do anything with it. That's why it's considered dead, resignation. Mariris, you don't feel good with mariris. Okay, atzvos, you don't feel good with it either. But mariris, you don't feel good with it because it's, well, writhing, I think is actually a good word. There's something in your skin that's not letting you settle. So good, take that and use it to get to where you want to be. That's like what they talk about sometimes. Oh, why do people wait for New Year's to make resolutions? That's it, I'm going to make changes. New Year's, I'm going to have a resolution. If it's a change worth making, what are you waiting for New Year's? Make it now. The Rebbe would speak about those things. The sages would say, that forever person should make angry his yeter tov. Basically, evil as a general idea is a degenerate form of gvura. Chesed, gvura, tiferes, the spheres. Chesed is kindness. Gvura is usually strength, severity, judgment. That's all concealment and stuff like that. So concealing forces, nature itself comes from the side of gvura, constriction, concealment. Evil is like the 2.0 version of concealment. It's not just, oh, we have free choice to make a decision. Evil is kind of like the perversion of what that concealment is, and it results in evil. We're going to use anger, we're going to use our righteous, our holy anger to combat it. We're going to tap into the side of gvura, of ourselves, but in a holy sense. We're going to use our yetzer tov, the good side of us, and we're going to make it anger against the negative side of us. That feeling the sadness, good. I'm going to turn the sadness into an axe for myself. I'm not going to let you use the axe to chop me down. I'm going to use the axe to chop you down. Speaking to evil and negativity and all that kind of stuff. With all this, how do we see that the end result is actually going to lead to joy? How do we get to joy at the end of all of this? Because that's still our ultimate goal. So the Alter Rebbe tells us we have a talk with ourselves. This is a different kind of talk. Not the talk that was like, what are you running after and why are you such a bum? Not the talk of like, oh, you think you're so special? What have you really done to break a sweat and all that kind of stuff? This is now a different talk. And definitely I'm far removed from godliness. But that is only true of me. This is my physical body. My physical body, my animal soul, they seem very far removed from godliness. But I still have an actual part of God within me, an nefesh elokis. Even the most quote-unquote worthless of people, as in even the people who seem like the biggest bum, they also have a godly part of them. And because I still have it within me, therefore I'll make it my entire aim and desire to extricate it from this exile and to return it to her father's house, i.e. to restore it to its source and its original state as in her youth. The fact that I'm a bum, whatever, but I have a godly soul within me, and let me at least, even though I'm such a worthless bum, the least I can do is dedicate myself toward the actual part of God that I have within me. That I can do. That's why our sages tell us that every day a person should always be in a state of teshuvah. What does it mean you're supposed to be in a constant state of teshuvah? If someone sinned, they repented. Why do I have to keep doing teshuvah for the same sin they did? Well, it depends how you translate teshuvah. If teshuvah is only repentance for sin, why do you have to repent anymore? Why do I need more teshuvah in my life? Teshuvah, as in lias kalim b'teshuvah, means returning the soul to its source. It's something in which someone can engage throughout his life, as in studying Torah, fulfilling the mitzvah, because we're trying to reconnect this soul that feels like it's in exile within the body. We want to reconnect it to its source. One mashal that they have is that there's this princess, and the king is trying to marry off the princess, and she's being very, very picky, as happens sometimes. Finally, the king, he's so fed up, he's like, that's it! The next man who walks in, man who couldn't get married that walks in, that's who she's going to marry. And of course, as luck would have it, the next guy who walks in is a peasant farmer. Well, the king already made his declaration. The guy's a nice guy, but he's a farmer. So they have the wedding, and he's like, okay, well, I'm very glad to have married off my daughter, but you two can really hang around here. You're not exactly the son-in-law I want to show off to other people. So he sets them up on a beautiful estate somewhere just that's not in the palace. Time passes a little bit, and the farmer's noticing that his princess wife, she's kind of sad. And he's a good guy. He's a good man. So he thinks, he's like, okay, my wife is so sad. I should do something to make her happy. I know what's going to make her happy. So he comes in one day with this big, massive basket. I noticed you've been sad. Look what I have for you. Dun, da, da! And he removes the cloth, and it's a big basket of potatoes. And she's like, what am I supposed to do with these? Aren't these the most amazing potatoes you've ever seen in your whole life? Okay, they're really nice, sweetheart. No, look at these potatoes and look at how creamy they are. Okay, whatever. He thinks himself, well, fine, okay. Maybe she doesn't really like potatoes so much. Okay, I know what I'm going to do. And he comes in, he has a big basket at da-da-da, look what I have for you. And it's tomatoes. Have you ever seen something so red and so juicy and so beautiful? And the princess is like, what? I don't get it. Why are you not happy with these things? Why am I not happy with these things? Because I'm a princess. Potatoes and tomatoes don't make me happy. I'm used to refined scents and stuff. I'm used to great music and art and jewels and riches and stuff like that. So I'm happy for your potatoes and your tomatoes, but that doesn't make me happy. Mashal D'Nirchal on this. Our princess, our godly soul in a physical body, wants to go home. It's like, what am I doing in this world? What am I doing in this body? And the body, we sense it. There's something within me that's not happy. I know how I'm going to make it happy. I'm going to buy a new car. I know I'm going to make it happy and eat ice cream. I know I'm going to make it happy. Buy new shoes or something like that. And your nuptial kiss is like, well, why do you think this is going to make me happy? That new car doesn't make me happy. Your new pair of shoes do not make me happy. You know what I'm used to? You know where I come from? You think that you're going to appease and you think that you're going to give satisfaction to an infinite piece of God with something material and physical of this world? You think you're going to take infinity and make it happy by giving it something finite? This is the illusion that we live under. So if we can acknowledge that illusion, you know what? I want the princess to be happy. I do want the infinity that's within me, even if I'm a peasant farmer, maybe there's a way I could figure out how to make it happy. So far removed from where it came from, what can I do for it? But we know Torah mitzvahs. If we reorient ourselves in that kind of way, there's no dissatisfaction anymore with what the rest of the world is. Because the physical material things, we know that they're finite. They're all tools for this world, yes. Everything is a tool for us to use for Torah mitzvahs, etc. Unless it's forbidden. But worry about all this kind of stuff, I got bigger things to worry about. I got bigger fish to fry. I got much more important things to worry about. I've got a princess who's been removed from her home and she's sad. How can I make her happy? And I'm going to dedicate myself to making her happy. Even though I'm so lowly and I'm such a bum and I'm peasant farmer and all that kind of stuff. But I have this opportunity that I can do this for her. And that's anything that we do, anything that we engage with in the physical world, because we cannot deny the physical reality that we live in. We don't believe in that. You can't function like that. We were put into a physical body in a physical world. So we're not going to deny it. We're just going to make sure that we're going to use it in the way that it's supposed to be used. This is all a tool for me. This is not an indulgence for me. This is supposed to be a tool for me in using in Torah mitzvahs. Whatever that mundane thing has to be. Person's got to go to work or whatever it is. But I'm not doing it for the money. I'm doing it because the money can get me X, Y, and Z. I'm doing this because these are the rules of this natural world that we have to live in. So I'm following it, not because I want to be following it, but just I got to do what I got to do because I got to keep the body alive. But my real focus, my real emphasis, that's not what my true dedication in life is to. My true dedication in life is to, well, to the princess, is to the infinite part of me. The Tanya itself doesn't bring in this module, but we have the module that Tanya brings in. There's no greater joy that we have than when we come out of exile and captivity, like the parable of the king's son. A prince who's been captured somehow, and he has to work the millstone, whatever, he has to work very hard. power. He's not living the prince life. And he finally gets freed from captivity. Obviously, there's a great joy. He finally gets to go home. Even though he's still in his work clothes, he's still in his slave clothes, and he's still all beat up like a slave. He's all dirty and all whatever, aka the body. But there's still such a great joy when he gets returned to the king's home. So every time we're doing Torah and mitzvos, we are bringing our soul back to the king's home. We're returning it to its source. Infinity is its source. Godliness is its source. So each time we give it more godliness, we're bringing it back to the source, even though we're still stuck in a physical body in the physical world. And this, of course, is supposed to be causing us great joy. Why? Because this descent is only for the sake of subsequent ascent. We bend our knees to jump higher. I have this dip that's occurred, this valley, aka the sadness. This is my crouching so that I could leap up higher. Let me use this now. Let me turn this into my axe. If I'm not just to destroy, but also to build up. Let me use this now, this impetus for change. I'm going to hijack it and weaponize it for my own good, literally. To you, God, I lift up my soul, etc. That this is why Torah is called that it restores the soul. We are restoring the soul back to its source when we learn Torah. Torah is God's chachma, and our soul is part of God, etc. Hashem's commandments are just, they glide on the heart. That's 31. After we've been through all these processes, we've broken our material self, we try to get through to our material selves, we've realigned our material outlook, which is what we did originally back in chapter 26, with the way we view challenges that we face. We re-embrace Hashgacha Pratis and knowing everything is for purpose, knowing everything is to bring us closer. Then we broke through the apathetic, the dullness of ourselves. Now we're taking all this negative feeling and we're actually going to use it in a positive sense. A driving force for change. We're used as a place to return ourselves to where we came from, to return ourselves to what really matters. I think it's an important topic because we often feel guilty when we go through hard times because a deep part of us knows that you're not supposed to be sunk by it. But when you accept the hard time as part of a process, that's very different. Whatever your understanding or embrace of it is something else, but accepting it as part of a process is very different. 5 stages of grief, they now have a 6th one, which is finding meaning. If the 5 stages can lead to finding meaning, the process, you have to get the saddest, you have to process it and whatever gets through it, and now we can rededicate ourselves toward meaning. But some of us go through that in different ways. Whatever changes happen in our lives are things that, as we start with the beginning, that make us jaded. Whatever reason we're going through it, I don't know, but I'm not going to waste the time of going through it. What can I do with it? Sometimes it doesn't make it easier, but it's not letting ourselves, it's just reminding ourselves that we're moving. We're not going to let ourselves not move forward, even if we're stuck in these negative situations or the tough situations that make no sense and are very frustrating.